slides and you're gonna
Oh.
pull that up and maybe hand me something I can advance. So mostly I want to thank all of you for being here because it's also your Saturday. And you've spent the whole day here. I mean, I got to like play a little bit at the sculpture park and stuff up here, and you know.
Turn it on.
So I'm with the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. As that pulls up, I want you to know that I have counterparts across the state. So they aren't always called energy and climate change, but 1 in 3 people in Wisconsin live in a community with ambitious clean energy or climate goals at this point. And those communities come together as the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition. That includes Stevens Point, Wausau, Green Bay, Appleton, Wauwatosa, Milwaukee, Racine, Dane County, Madison, other communities there, Eau Claire County, La Crosse County. So you've lots of, I'm going to talk about this a little bit from our perspective, but like know that there's stuff going on in your neighborhood too. And if you aren't connected, often it's people in the planning department who have that climate role in addition to everything else they do. But, and if you can't figure out who's in your community, you can always contact me and I can tell you who we talk to. Awesome. Awesome. So is something remote for that? Oh, you don't want to next slide me because I'll be, give me your mouse. Can I have your mouse? And yeah. I promised Madeline I could do this in 15 minutes. And if I have to say next slide, I'll never make it. Okay. So County Exec Joe Parisi created our office about the time that our country pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords. He said, if no one else is going to lead, we're going to lead in Dane County. Ambitious goals about our internal operations and countywide. But we're a county. We can't make people do things. That's not how counties work in Wisconsin. So to get things done, we have to lead by example. We do innovative things and try to help local governments and business follow that innovation. We also spend a lot of time celebrating other people's leadership because leadership is contagious. When we showcase people who are leading,
Sorry about that.
more leadership happens, okay? They lead more and their peers lead more too. So we run a climate champions program. More than 150 entities, almost all of the large employers in Dane County are doing something right, and we're celebrating that to get them to do more. We're also obsessed. This whole wearing a thing. It's like a crown.
Yeah.
It is like a tiara, which I never wore, hard to believe. So we're, and Madeline said, you know, I want to make it easy for people to do these things. So when the IRA came out, we have to make it easy to do this. So we've got a whole section of our website about how the IRA works. The internet is not ending at county lines. Okay, I know folks in other counties use our website. Please use it. All of that information there. We're obsessed about the IRA, first, because it's a huge amount of money. But second, because especially for us in Purple, Wisconsin, this solves a bunch of long-term policy challenges we've had in the energy space. So for a really long time, some of you have advocated for more funding for focus on energy. But the legislature has said no. Well, now through the IRA, we have $150 million more funding for energy efficiency and electrification through focus on energy. And by the way, everyone's eligible for it. So propane customers can benefit too, something else we've advocated for. There's electrification there. So these two bills, which are really different but complementary, together create this huge opportunity for us. And the way I tend to think about this is Congress and this White House really did an end run around conservative legislatures. You know, a lot of this money is tax cuts, tax credits. If you do a project, you get the tax credit. There is no way the state legislature can stop you from getting that tax credit. Okay, so they've done this beautiful, and this was really important to us in Dane County. We've got ambitious goals. We need people to have financing to do projects. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And then the IRA happened. I was like, oh, okay, now there's the financing. My job is to help people know about it, get projects done so that we can tell these stories and in a state like Wisconsin, build the case for ongoing support for these kind of initiatives over the long run to address our climate goals. So that's why the IRA is really important, because it's giving us this chance to do things we probably couldn't have done otherwise. So I'm going to go through some pieces of this, and I'm going to start with renewable energy. Even though I grew up in the efficiency world, and we're always supposed to talk about energy efficiency first, but the reality is the IRA loves renewable energy. Okay, everybody, it's like an Oprah thing, everybody can get a 30% credit, tax credit for solar, wind, battery storage, or geothermal. Businesses, including farms, non-tax exempt entities, local governments, nonprofits, churches, homes, apartments. The incentive, the tax credit, unlimited tax credit for renewable energy is available to everyone. And essentially, there was this tax credit before for private businesses who had enough tax liability to use a tax credit. But local governments couldn't use that because we didn't pay taxes. Well, Congress invented this new feature, elective pay. Now we can claim that 30% credit even though we don't pay taxes. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. For profits who don't have enough tax liability, so some businesses like farms don't have enough profit to claim those credits. Well, they can sell their credit to someone else now. And homeowners, individuals, sometimes, so if you did a $100,000 solar project, which would be gargantuan, and got a $30,000 tax credit, maybe you only owe $10,000 in taxes. Well, under the IRA, you can take that other $20,000 and apply it to your taxes next year and the year after until you use it up. So, like on the renewable scale, this is just unbelievable how, and people don't know that. So that's part of what we want you all thinking about. How do you tell everyone about this? And I included this, so Madeline will make sure folks get a PDF of this. Some of this is just so you have it. On the tax credit, this is on the business side. If you build something larger than 1 megawatt, which is 1,000 kilowatts, that's a huge system. That would be farm fields, not like rooftop. You have to meet a prevailing wage requirement to get the full 30%. But the other thing to know is there are actually bonus credits. In some cases, entities are getting up to 70% credits on their project because it's in a low-income community, because they use domestic content, so there's like it's huge, people. It's just huge. Okay, there's a reason here. I might have some reputation about loving the IRA. So the other thing that it's important to tell folks about this is the cost of solar has dropped dramatically in the last decade. So I installed solar at our house back in 2008, and we paid about $3 a watt for our panels. And I remember my solar friends telling me I got a great deal. Solar is now like 50 cents a watt, okay? So this is important to have and know, because sometimes people say to you, oh, I looked at solar and it didn't pencil out. I'm like, well, when did you, I don't know, 15 years ago? I'm like, did you look at a big screen TV 15 years ago? I mean, costs change. Oops.
1 second, just share.
Just,
Yeah, it's possible that it was me.
no, it was us.
Okay.
We had it's this one. It's supposed to be there.
You want to share that screen
Well, but we were sure.
and then share.
Okay.
Understand.
Okay, so that's the solar systems. The other thing, just to I think it's helpful to have a visual of, so when you do solar, the solar is on your facility, It's going to run first to your facility, and then only if there's extra, run back through the meter to the grid. We're seeing more and more solar installers tell me about 10% of our folks are now putting batteries on systems so that people get to store that solar and use it when they want to. Some of our utilities aren't great about buyback rates, so that's sort of happening there. Yeah. The last thing, I just want to circle back to sort of the scale of these rebates. So this is my favorite case study of this. So the Village of McFarland built a public safety building during COVID. They decided before the IRA that they were going to do a net zero building. And then, you know, COVID happened, supply chains, all of that construction costs. They had to make a very courageous decision to keep building net zero when they knew it was going to cost their village more money. So they made that decision, and shortly thereafter, the IRA passed, and now their building with solar and geothermal is going to qualify for about $1 million in elective pay credits. What that means is the village is going to literally get a check in the mail from the IRS for $1 million unrestricted federal funding into their community budget. Because sometimes karma works in our favor, and you know, they made some courageous choices, and now they're going to get this amazing benefit for that. So so one of the things we think about is how do we highlight those cases so that more people go, oh, where's that money for me? Okay, energy efficiency. The thing that we know is the really important thing first to talk to folks about. These are two graphics I really like. So that one on that's the right over there, is a DOE graphic that shows this up here is the heated box of a house. You know, when you're heating and cooling, you want to keep the heat and cool you make inside that box. The bigger thing that shows all the arrows of air leakage is what really happens. Because when we build a house, we cut square holes and then we put round pipes through them. And if we don't air seal properly, heat goes through that all the time. There was this on the other side is an article from Minnesota. So Minneapolis has an ordinance for the last 3 or 4 years now that when a house is sold, they have to do an energy audit. And they're finding that about 2/3 of the homes in Minneapolis have inadequate insulation. And the reporter here was like surprised a little bit by that. I want you to know that wherever you come from in Wisconsin, 2/3 of the homes have inadequate insulation. Okay, that's just, they're older than the energy code. They were built poor, you know, there's just lots of our homes, but we all grew up in leaky homes. So we don't know how like sucky it is. We think it's fine. So I have a cheat list. When people tell me, oh, my house is efficient, and then they tell me it was built in 1951, I say, oh, so are some of the floors like warmer or colder than others certain parts of the year? Do you have windows that frost up? Does the snow melt off your roof faster than it does off your neighbor whose house is facing the same way toward or away from the sun? Icicles, ice dams? Is your energy usage higher than your neighbors? So in MG&E and Alliant service territories, you can actually look up the energy usage of any house on their website. You can see some, you know, I can randomly pull up a couple houses in a neighborhood and show you which one of them has an inadequate insulation. Like, okay, so
And did they vote? You can find
Right.
that out too.
right, you could find out if they voted. So all of these folks, we want to do an energy audit. We want them to like do something about this. And under the Inflation Reduction Act, there are for homeowners a bunch of tax credits for energy efficiency too. Now, there was no limit on the renewable energy credits. The number could go as big as 30% of your system. On the efficiency side, there are limits. There's an annual maximum and there's a limit per each thing. These credits are all in place for 10 years. So what we say on the efficiency side is, so you could do an audit this year and get a credit on that, and then you could do insulation, and then you could address your heat. You know, you can do things over multiple years to maximize the impact of this. The trouble with tax credits is that a household has to have the money to do the work so that they can next year get a credit on their taxes. So the one like non-tax credity program in the IRA is these new energy efficiency and electrification programs. So we call them home energy rebates. Here in Wisconsin, this is going to run through Focus on Energy. This is the $150 million I mentioned. So there are two programs, one to make homes more energy efficient and one to electrify homes. So on the electrification side, it's going to cover heat pumps and induction stoves, but it's also going to cover wiring and panel upgrades because older homes are going to need wiring and panel upgrades. And these programs are set up so the incentives are up to 100% of the cost for households at or below 80% of area median income. So that's going to vary across the state what that qualification is. And then there will be for sure incentives up to 150% of area median income. And Focus is still working out if there's anything available above that. This is super important because we are in the midst of a huge revolution where our homes and our buildings are going to be all electric. There is a real potential that affluent folks get on the electrification bandwagon, they hear all the good things about this, they do it, and we leave poor folks behind on an aging natural gas system that they have to suddenly pay for. So it's critically important these programs get to the folks who need them, especially in rural Wisconsin, because heat pumps are so much more cost effective than propane furnaces. And they deliver cooling too. So like that's a whole benefit in a changing climate. So I want to say a tiny bit about heat pumps because heat pumps can feel like this overwhelming thing. The most important thing for you to know about heat pumps is your central air conditioner is a heat pump with half the features. Okay? What your central air conditioner does is take hot air outside, run it through a compressor, and move cool air into the house. A heat pump does that more efficiently, but it also does it in reverse. It takes cold air from outside, runs it the other way through a compressor, and pushes heat into the house. Okay? That's technology mystery solved kind of thing. Lots of different ways heat pumps can, there's lots of variations of heat pumps, and the right answer for people is going to vary based on, do you want to be an all electric home? Are you most worried about comfort? There's like, Focus on Energy has a new consumer guide. We've got on our website a list of contractors who install heat pumps in Dane County and Focus will have a list like that when they roll out those new rebates this summer. We're sort of piloting a list to get people used to the idea of being on a list. So the last thing I'll say about efficiency is on the business side, because my sense is as you go out into the world and talk about these things, you're going to want to be able to talk to neighborhood centers and schools and other groups too. So on efficiency, this isn't as good again as the renewables. The energy efficiency tax incentive is a deduction for businesses. Now a credit comes off the amount of taxes you owe. A deduction comes off the income to figure out how much tax you owe. So it's like a multiplier less good. The tax deduction that's available is essentially for existing buildings, the current energy use of the building. If you can cut that by 25 to 50%, you get a per square foot deduction. This works best then for big, older, inefficient buildings. Because if you have a building that's 200,000 square feet and you can get a 50% reduction, $1 million tax deduction starts to be something that's material sort of thing. And so this isn't as easy for governments to get or other tax exempt entities. We have to like assign the deduction to the design team. It's kind of messy, but this change in the IRA is permanent. So everything else expires in 10 years. This program existed in a less generous way before. So this is a thing that already is permanent there, and we'll figure it out in the next couple of years. I mean, we'll figure out how to do those transfers more effectively. We just don't have a lot of models to share yet. The last thing I will say briefly is that the IRA also covers electric vehicles. So for individuals, there's a $7,500 new vehicle credit, $4,000 used vehicle credit, and for businesses, there's a $75,000 light duty vehicle and a $40,000 heavy duty vehicle credit. On the individual side, starting this year, dealerships can give you that $7,500 tax credit off the purchase price. And this is huge because we were like, okay, but what if someone doesn't qualify for that big of a tax credit? And it turns out the IRS doesn't care. Like what they've said is, we're just giving it at the purchase price. And so, like, yeah, you get the $7,500 off, and it affects even how much sales tax you pay on the vehicle. So it's like affordability. What we're hearing, and we're pushing now to try to get some statewide groups to survey dealerships and find out who all is set up to do the instant. In Dane County, it sounds like a fair number of dealerships are. I don't have very good data though yet, but one way or another, I want to publish a list of who's set up in our area to do this, just because that shining a light on the people who are doing the right thing helps other people come along without shaming and alienating them. The other thing I'll quickly say about that is on the business side, so on the individual side, there are restrictions on which vehicles the tax credit applies to based on where batteries are made and this kind of complicated thing. None of that applies on the business side. All EVs qualify for the credit for businesses, and nonprofits can get those credits too. Essentially, there's two places in the tax code for those rules, and Congress missed one of them when they made it more complicated. We love that. So then, like this slide, these are all like, you know, again, our website is a resource, Rewiring America, Focus on Energy. In our area, Madison is a good resource on solar. I wanted to keep this tight because I wanted to be able to answer questions. So I'm going to stop there. Oh, can you put the contact info back up? Someone's asking. Here, I'll give you back your mouse. I would hate to work without a mouse.
Kathy, do you have maps of where those income residences are? So you can look up your address and find out where you fall for the less than 80, 8150.
Oh, great question, Dick. So actually, Focus on Energy is building a new eligibility tool where you're going to be able to put in your county, and they will tell you where you qualify for that, and that will roll out so I kind of glossed over that. Focus on Energy has to submit a federal plan to run that federally funded work, and they just did a bunch of input sessions. They're going to file a plan with the commission. There'll be an opportunity for comment, then it will go to DOE, then it will come back, then it will get implemented. So they're like in the process of that.
Second question, you said everybody's eligible. Are utilities eligible? And if they are, do they have to pass the full credit on to their customers? Why wouldn't that work?
So utilities are eligible for the solar credits now on their solar installations. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it will be commission regulation how that's documented in the rate cases. Yeah, but there is right. Until now, utilities have really liked to have third parties build those systems because utilities couldn't access the funds. But now I think we're going to see a shift in that and more utility ownership up front. But yeah, it should be reflected somehow.
Kathy,
Mhm.
hello again. I'm
Hey.
Phil. We talked earlier. On that issue of what are the income levels, Rewire America has a spot where you can input your address.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I've done it. I'm not sure how accurate they are, but I did it for instance, for Waukesha. The number for Waukesha for a household of 2 people filing jointly, it's about 65,000. Under that annual income, you qualify for the low, or the big dollars rebates. The 50% number, I think, was around 113,000 for a family of 2. So it gives you an idea of roughly what we're talking about. And frankly, a lot of retiree people will qualify for those numbers. For the
Yeah, I know the numbers in, I want to say, the low income weatherization program, a family of 4 is like 65,000. In Dane County, the 80% level for a family of 4 is 95,000. So we think there's like, folks, a $30,000 income bracket of people who can get free services here who could not get them before. So we're obsessed, of course, with how do we reach those folks and make sure that they all are signing up to get things. Yeah.
Hi, this may not be in your purview because it's more of a statewide question, but as an EV owner, I'm wondering if anybody in the room knows what's happening in our state regarding the charging infrastructure. The number one reason that I hear from friends and neighbors that they won't buy an EV is they're concerned about range. Not having charging stations is a real problem with that. So
Yeah, so Wisconsin got in the infrastructure bill. So the infrastructure bill was a lot more formula allocation sorts of things. We got $78 million to do EV infrastructure along the major highways. But the federal rules say that to spend that money, we have to be a state that allows people to buy charging by the kilowatt hour. And we are not currently. We are one of 2 states that say that you have to be a utility to sell kilowatt hours. All other people can do is sell time. Well, selling time isn't fair, because if you have an older Nissan Leaf, it charges slower than the latest Ford Mach-E's or Teslas. So it's like charging people to go to the gas station, and people who are slower like pay more than people who. So the legislature has a bill to fix this. It passed both the Senate and the Assembly, but the Assembly made an amendment to it that said local governments couldn't require developers to install EV charging infrastructure, which was about Madison and other places requiring that. And so now it has to go back to the Senate. The Senate will be in session for a couple days in March. We believe that they are going to pass that amendment, and the governor will sign that bill. If it doesn't pass in March, the federal DOT has said we only have until the end of March to fix our law, and then they're saying you don't get the money. So we're hoping that, it passed the Senate with mostly everybody. We thought it would just pass the Assembly and be done. Joint Finance passed it, but we're still. So DOT, our state DOT currently has an RFP on the streets, a request for proposals to get those bids for those first round of charging stations, but they can't actually do anything with that until the law is fixed. But the fact that they have the RFP out tells me that even they think this is all going to come together. But it means it will probably be next summer before we see any of that EV charging starting to fill those gaps on our roads. Some states, feels like it was Ohio, that in some states already have federally funded EV charging infrastructure up and operating. I want to say it was Ohio that had the first station, but yeah, here we are.
Vote.
Vote.
Vote. Question? Oh, you mentioned real quick about the big farm scale systems. Is my impression is there's still a lot of hurdles, like over the 100 kilowatt for a school or even a city to build a community sized system. Or did you say 1 megawatt?
So 1
But-
megawatt is where the rules change on the incentive. So yeah, a school system, somebody or a commercial business putting on their roof, what we see in Dane County is the biggest of those systems are maybe 250 kW or something on like a hospital. And so depending on who your utility is, the rules of how they buy power back from you vary. Over 100 kW, all of our utilities will only pay a customer the avoided cost for any power they send back to the grid. So there's a limit to what folks install. It's more of a, okay, the math doesn't work because our school is closed on weekends, and so we'd sell power back to the grid and we get 3 cents, not 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And it's that math of, it's not that you're not getting anything, and batteries in some cases are a solution. Just store that electricity and use it when you can use it instead of selling it back if you think that's, you know.
Great feedback what you're seeing.
I don't like feedback. Some feedback I like. The question I have, Kathy, is out of all these wonderful bazillion things, what would be most, in your opinion, strategic for our folks to be concentrating on in the next year in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think, you know, really there's two pieces of this. There's certainly the home energy rebates and the how can folks in your community know about and take advantage of those home energy rebates, especially if they weren't eligible before for Focus on Energy. So right now, Focus on Energy can't help someone on propane with insulation or air sealing because that saves propane, and they aren't responsible for propane, sort of thing. So especially those propane customers, but also the folks who just fall through the cracks that don't have enough money to do these things until these programs come along. Because the more momentum, think about this like the Affordable Care Act, the more momentum we get, the more people who benefit from this short-term funding, the more interest there is in long-term funding to keep doing these things, you know? So it's that sort of, I do think that renewables is important because particularly like thinking about schools and sometimes faith community, you know, there are entities that if they do solar, it creates some community interest in energy and can ripple into a bunch of people in their community doing things. So like, being sharp to where are those opportunities and are you helping? Because, you know, in smaller school districts, those folks they're not following all of this federal stuff, but they need some local advocates who can go, hey, there's some good stuff. And, you know, and we are always there to help point people to, there are emerging some national initiatives now really just focused on helping schools get access to this stuff. So there's like resources there. So it's kind of those two things, but I think it's, you know, knowing, hey, there's all this opportunity. Why aren't we taking advantage of it when we're building or when we're doing whatever? Thank you.
What qualifies as a premium vehicle for the credit?
Oh, what, so you can't get the EV credit on like a $200,000 electric. I think officially it's like over $180,000, you know, but there are these rules about how expensive it can be and how much your income can be, kind of thing. And that's all baked into all of the lists of what's available. But yeah, it's that sort of thing.
Hi, I have a question.
We get $150 million, but can that be exhausted in a year or two?
So yes, well, it's interesting that I talked to someone the other day at Focus and they said, you know, the 6 or 7 years we run these home energy rebates. And I said, you're kidding. You're going to run out of money in 2 to 3 years because I am lining people up at the door to get this. And they were like, oh, one of the cool things in that particular program is Congress wrote into the rules that if there are states that don't use their money by like 2 years in, it gets reallocated to other states who are running good programs. So we're thinking about that. A thing to know there is, you know, we have a statewide energy efficiency program, Focus on Energy. There are only a handful of states in the country that have a statewide program. everybody else has to build a statewide infrastructure to deliver those incentives. So, you know, we're ahead of that gate a little bit. We have some shots at getting more money there.
And that's gonna have to be our last question.
Okay,
We
this
can
is
do
my
one more,
question,
one more.
about the local government climate coalition. What have been some big successes from that collaborative, and how are your conversations evolving to include the IRA?
Yeah, so a big success, I would say, was around the state building codes. And okay, we haven't won this one yet, but when we got involved in the conversation, the state agency was saying, well, we think the amendments that the developers have suggested to the code are all benign and aren't going to affect efficiency at all. And so we're supporting what the developers want. And we brought experts into that conversation, and we're really blunt about our ability as local governments to speak truth there. You know, I might have said that what they had was crap. Because that's why they send me to meetings. And in the end, the code that they proposed to the legislature was a good code. So like we won at DSPS, we lost at the legislature, but like, and we're all thinking about how all of these local governments help get this information out to residents. You know, a couple of our communities in Dane County are looking at like water bill stuffers to let residents know about what's going on and stuff. And so like local governments have means to communicate with people. They just need a little poke sometimes from some of you that it's a good idea. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh. I should just say I have some like handouts, like some of our handouts up here. If between things you want to grab something before I leave.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Another round of applause for her great work she's done. Okay, I don't want to get too close to that thing. We are now going to have our breakouts in the second set. These are 30-minute breakouts until 4 o'clock. We'll come back here at 4:15 after a 15-minute break and have the 2-minute report backs. So our breakouts are going to be building electrification and efficiency here with Bill Smith. I think Kathy's going to stick around. Faith voter outreach, Terry Wiggins in the nursery down that way. Faith voter outreach down that way in the nursery. And then student voter outreach will be Xanthi, Anna, and Hope in the choir. And the writing the postcards. We're going to be actually writing postcards now, if anybody's interested, back in that corner.